Welcome back. As President Biden's re-election campaign ramps up, one of the key issues voters seem to have with him in the polls is the economy. The Biden campaign's big challenge, changing the narrative. Let's talk about it tonight with Rhett Buttle. He's founder of Public-Private Strategies and National Business Advisor for Biden's 2020 campaign. Up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Welcome back, Rhett. Good to see you again.
Always good to see you, sir.
Hey, so we saw some numbers came out last week when it comes to jobs. 275,000 new jobs added, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics back in February. That defied expectations. So we are seeing, in terms of some of these stats coming out, positive upticks in things the president can campaign on. Why do you think that not all voters are seeing it that way?
Well, look, it's not just unemployment being down. We're also seeing record new small business starts. Yesterday, the president was in Arizona announcing a huge investment with Intel to build semiconductor fabs here at home, creating jobs here at home. But the reality is, you know, there are big numbers. We can talk about all of these macro things. It's really important now to start telling the story. We need to talk about the small business owner who got a loan for the first time, who started their small business. We need to talk about the consumer who, you know, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, is able to get insulin capped at $35 a month. Those stories, as we move closer and closer to the campaign cycle, are really going to be important so that voters at home know exactly what Joe Biden has done for them.
Early on, we were talking about things like the American Rescue Act, which was passed early on, of course, as we were trying to get back out of the doldrums that COVID-19 put us in and the business world in as well. You mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act. So as we move ahead here and look at some of these numbers, I know you mentioned the macro numbers there, but in terms of things like inflation, which was a concern about a year ago, we were still seeing inflation outpacing wages. It has not been that way since January of 2023. So when it comes to the pocketbook issues out there, those are the things that the challenge is selling that and reminding people, hey, look, you are better off than you were perhaps a year ago, 13, 14 months ago, and beyond that.
Well, look, when voters go to the poll and as we get closer and closer to the election, I think things are really going to go hone in. They're going to ask themselves, were I better than 4 years ago? And the reality is let us all remember, 4 years ago, we were hunkered in our homes. Mm-hmm. We were wearing masks. There was a pandemic that was not being handled well by Donald Trump and his administration. Today, most of us have returned to the workforce. We have a much more flexible work schedule. As you mentioned, for the first time, you know, the growth in people's wages are outpacing inflation. And so there's a lot of positive news. And part of this is really helping consumers understand what that positive news looks like. For example, you know, America is growing faster than many of the other developed countries. Inflation is slower here than it is in other the other countries. So American families still, even though things are going well, they need more breathing room. And so there's more work to do. So part of it is helping them understand how these laws that have been passed have really helped us get to this point, but also talking about how 4 more years of electing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to continue to build upon that progress.
So in 2016, among the other things that Donald Trump had campaigned upon, he was promising a big, and I'm pretty sure I'm using his words here, a big, beautiful tax cut, which he got through with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. We've talked with some business owners here on the show who've said, you know, it helped in the immediate aftermath, but there are certain provisions that are set to expire out there. What sort of big economic platform, big economic moves do you think that the president should make part of the 2024 platform to keep this sustaining? Or is it a matter of just sort of sustaining the status quo? Because as we said, looking at the numbers, they certainly trend in a way that would be conducive to that.
Well, look, the reality is the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which was passed by Donald Trump, gave a lot of money to large corporations and wealthy people. But what it did not is it didn't level the playing field for small businesses, main streets, and working families. And so the fact that many of the tax cuts that are in that law are expiring is an opportunity to revisit the conversation. I think the Biden administration has a strong opportunity to really work with the tax code to put money in the hands of working families and small businesses. The reality is we have a consumer-based economy. When consumers are able to spend money, they're able to go out into their communities, visit small businesses. Those are the things that then create jobs, allows community to thrive. So we really need to make sure that we have a tax code that's fair, that levels the playing field for these folks. And I think that, you know, in 2025, when you see a President Biden reelected, those are the things that he'll focus on with the tax package.
One of the things that came out earlier today, I believe, was Republican leaders, about 24 of them in the Senate, kind of unleashed on Janet Yellen. They're calling this an energy tax hike when it comes to certain provisions expiring here. But, you know, in reality, many of these are credits towards green energy. And there's a fear. There's a lot of people who believe that there is this war on gas stoves and things of that nature coming out of the Biden administration moving ahead. I mean, when you look at the budget, budgets are always a wish list. And no Congress, no president ever gets a budget passed lock, stock, and barrel. But this is going to be the narrative coming out from the president's opponents, looking at certain things and characterizing that as a tax hike that would affect some people but trickle down to everyone else.
So look, the reality is that we have an immense opportunity to build a clean energy economy. The Inflation Reduction Act, which we've talked about before, has many important components that lower the cost of healthcare, but it also makes a down payment on really allowing America to be a leader in transitioning to a clean energy economy. The way that we do that is through creating tax incentives that help working families, that help private sector companies who want to do public-private sector partnerships. And a lot of that needs to be built on in future budgets. And so I think what you heard Secretary Yellen talking about today was, how do we create incentive structures for working families, small business owners to be able to benefit from tax credits that allow them to be part of a clean energy future? The reality is the old ways of getting energy, while they're very important to stabilize and we need to continue to support many of those communities, we need a plan to transition to a clean energy economy. Part of that is making sure that consumers, working families, and businesses are prepared to do that. These sorts of tax credits allow that transition to happen in a fair and equitable way.
That is Rhett Buttle joining us tonight here on the Final Five. Rhett, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Always good to see you, sir.
And the Final Five is back after this.
Come as you are.